be bringing in questions that Barb and the team will be asking us, and then we'll have a video after if we get our technical difficulties worked out.
It's okay. It's all right. Okay, Lynn.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you your question, and then you can introduce yourself. At what point in your career did you realize a personal brand was important? And at what time what were some of the foundational characteristics or values of your brand?
Okay.
That's a lot.
It is
Sorry.
a lot. All right.
I can repeat it.
We'll start with the introduction
Okay.
first. Okay. I'm Lynn Langenberg-Holt, and I work for EY. So I'm in their advisory services practice, specifically supply chain and operations. I have an industry background for the most part, so stepping into consulting was something relatively new over the past year or so. Okay, so your question.
Okay, at what point in your career did you realize that you needed a personal brand? We'll start there.
Okay. Well, it was very early on. It was one of my first real procurement jobs. So I was working at Ford Motor Company. I was a buyer of injection mold tooling, so I was the global lead buyer. And I had stepped into this role really early on in my career. And about a month into the role, my boss comes to me and says, you need to reduce the supply base by about 50%. So imagine my shock, because one, I'm pretty green, relatively out of college, right? I'm new to the category and the technology. I had to deal with 7 manufacturing plants across the U.S., so I'm dealing with highly tenured technical manufacturing engineers, and there's a little old me, green out of school, as well as tier 1 suppliers, so lots of visibility on the whole thing. And I knew right then and there that I was not going to be able to accomplish that by myself. I needed a team, so I needed to figure out a way to gain the trust and the respect, and get them to participate, to join me in this effort that was going to take probably 3 or 4 months. So I realized I needed to present myself in a certain way, and I came up with 3 things: firm, fair, and fun. And these have resonated with me throughout my entire career, and I'll explain them. First, the firm comes from just being decisive, making decisions, and walking in with a process or a template. I didn't want to go in front of 7 manufacturing plants and really not have an idea of the direction I was going to go. The fairness, part of what I'm known for is my customer-focused approach. So the fairness is that I will listen to everyone. I wanted to hear everything that the manufacturing plants had to say about their sourcing needs and their requirements. So I was there to listen. I will always listen to the internal stakeholder. And the fun is I'm very relationship-oriented, and we spend a lot of time at work. So I did not want this to be a miserable experience for anybody. And I wanted to have fun with it, so I wanted to build relationships, I wanted to get to know people, and that's really has been my persona along my career, just firm, fair, and fun. So, you know what, we're going to do business together, but we're going to do it the right way with integrity, fairness, and we're going to get to know each other along the way. But you're not going to walk on me either. So.
Yeah, so we have the 3 F's.
But
Yep. Firm, fair, fun. 3 F's. You guys noting that down? That's awesome. Thank you for that, Lynn.
you're welcome.
So, Jessica, you're next up.
Okay.
Remember to introduce yourself. You already got the shout out, but Okay. And my first question for you is, as a woman, why is branding particularly important?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Jessica Harris with Series Solutions, and we're super excited to have you here and partner with GWP and all the amazing things that are happening, so fun stuff. I work for Series Solutions. I lead the supply chain practice. We are a professional services firm, aka a consulting firm. You had asked one of the things, like, what are we known for?
Mm-hmm.
And I think personally, I'm known for being what I call a supply chain geek. I love the profession. I am passionate about helping companies become more efficient and effective. I'm also known for as being a trusted advisor, both for our clients, but for my colleagues and peers in my network. And then I think finally, I'm known for being well connected and having a good pulse on the market. And with that being well connected, right, people know that I am willing to use my network to help folks in any way that is possible, and my network is the same way. A prime example of that is, I'm not a recruiter. I don't do perm placement for a business or for a living. However, I find that I'm often one of the first phone calls that people make when they're find themselves in transition or they're anticipating making a move. And I love that. I love being in a position to be able to help in any way that I can.
I actually have someone that I want to introduce to you.
Oh, yes. Let's do it. See, this is how it works.
Yes.
So building your own professional reputation and your own professional brand is important for everybody. But for women in particular, as far as we have come as women in the workforce, now we officially make up over 50% of the workforce. We still live in a world where there is a gap in leadership at the gender level. We live in a world where we're still faced with gender bias on a daily basis. So we have to take control of creating our own narrative and our own professional reputation. Because if we don't, there's two options. Either the people in the room are going to fill that void with their own perception and story about how and where you add value, or perhaps even worse, you'll just get overlooked entirely. So we've got, right, a responsibility not only to ourselves, but to the people around us to make sure that they know what we do really well, and how we can contribute to the organization or to the profession or to others around us. So if you look at it like an obligation, then it starts to feel less like I'm doing this for myself, but I'm doing this, right, for the people around me, so they know when to call me for that next opportunity or that next big challenge. It's really great. That being said, your brand is what separates you, what distinguishes you, so you want to be vocal about it. I will tell you, this does not come naturally for me. Like a lot of people, right, we're not naturally self-promoters, but we have to get past that and recognize that it's not coming from a place of self-promotion in a negative way. It's coming from a place of self-promotion, and if you focus on how your story can help others, then it sort of sits better. I tend to, a lot of times, people will talk about women having a lack of confidence, and that's why they're not vocal, and I tend to look at it differently. I think it comes down to style and personality. And some people are outgoing and expressive, and some people are a little bit different. So if you just sort of trust that self-promotion doesn't have to conflict with humility and a desire to be helpful, it kind of flips the tables on that.
Right. It's all about bringing your best self.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, Sarah actually taught me really early on. Sarah and I have been friends now. We met 2 years ago, but we've been really friends for about a year. And the first advice she gave me was, be true to yourself, right? Let your true self shine. And if you can focus on that and helping people, it's going to be so much easier.
Fully agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Speaking of Sarah, hi Sarah.
Hello, Houston.
All right, Sarah, what are the first steps of building your brand?
So we'll do a quick intro, and then branding is one of my absolute favorite topics. It's something I'm really, really passionate about. So you'll see a lot of energy, and I might even jump up and down a little bit. I get really excited about this subject. My name is Sarah Scudder. I'm president of Real Sourcing Network. We are a very niche software company in the print and marketing space. And I had a little bit of a, I would say, untraditional career path. In college, I moved to Sonoma County wine country, very, very tough place to live. And I was actually planning to go into the fashion industry. Fashion is my passion and my love, and I actually wanted to produce fashion shows. I wanted to work for the company that produces the Victoria's Secret shows and then open my own company. And when I was a senior, I was in a sorority and I was finishing my presidency, and we put on a big event every year for diabetes. It's our national philanthropy. And I volunteered as my last hurrah before I graduated to facilitate putting on this event. And I had to source all this stuff, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was in college, I was busy, so I hired this local company to source everything marketing related that I needed for our event. And after the event was over, they said, hey, why don't you come work for us? And I said, I know nothing about procurement, I know nothing about the marketing services space, and procurement seems kind of boring, and no thank you. But that's what I was thinking. I didn't say that. So I went in and met with the owners and met with the team, and I decided it would be an incredible opportunity for me to learn about entrepreneurship and kind of get my foot wet in potentially having my own business someday. So I started 2 days after I graduated, and here I am now 15 years later. I was a marketer. I transitioned into the marketing procurement side and then started my company about 1.5 years ago. So kind of a very non-traditional, interesting path with a little bit of entrepreneurship, marketing, and the procurement side. So how to build a brand? It can be overwhelming when you think about it. There are people that you may follow on LinkedIn or follow online and you think, wow, they're just absolutely incredible and amazing and they're just so good at this. How do I even start? So there's a simple 4-step process that I follow and when I mentor and talk to other people about, and I think it can be really helpful to build a plan that works for you, but I'm going to give you those 4 steps. The first is awareness. Realizing that you need to and want to build a brand. That's the absolute first step. Gone are the days where you started a company and you're there 30 or 40 years and you retire from the same company. There's acquisitions, there's changes in the market. So knowing that you want to become your own person and control your brand and your destiny. So that's the first step. The second step is exploration. Make a list of your core beliefs and what you're really passionate about. And I think what's really important in this step is listing your whys and your value, what you value. And your passions can be both personal and professional. So Courtney on my team loves ice skating, so she incorporates that into her passion and her vision board. Amanda makes ketchup at home.
I do. I used to.
She used to.
Until I moved to Las Vegas, and then I was done.
So think about incorporating what makes you happy as a person and what you enjoy doing in your free time when you're working on that step. The third is defining your brand. And this is really, really important. And something I'll recommend here, make it really clear and simple. If someone asks who you are or what you stand for, if you have to go and read a paragraph or make something really complicated, people are not going to remember it. And a couple examples that I'll give you as you start defining your brand, think about Nike. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about the Nike brand?
Just do it.
Just do it.
The swish.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that comes to mind because Nike kept it clear and simple. What about ESPN? First thing that comes to mind when you think of ESPN?
Doo-doo.
You think of sports,
Yes.
right? ESPN sports, clear and simple. What about Lululemon? Yoga pants, their bags, comfy athletic wear, right? Again, keeping it very clear and simple. And then I'll give you 2 examples of people actually in our industry. If you don't follow them online, I highly recommend reaching out to them and connecting them. One is Mark Raffin, and his company is called Negotiation Ninja. And everything he does is around negotiation and being a negotiation expert. And he's done a really good job of defining that in his brand. And the other is a female named Dana Small, who lives by me in the San Francisco Bay Area. And she, last year or the year before, was really trying to think about her place and how she was going to build her brand as a young emerging professional. And she said, you know what, I love category management. As nerdy and geeky as that may sound, that's what she loves. So she has branded herself as Miss Category Management. And she's launched a blog, misscategorymanagement.com, and everything she does is around category management, and that's just who she's defined herself to be. And the 4th step is developing a marketing plan. And the purpose of this is to make a plan to actually communicate your brand. It's great that you know who you want your brand to be, but you also need to communicate it to the world. How are other people going to know about this? How many of you would consider yourselves to be active on LinkedIn?
Oh, right here. I actually know some of these guys, and they legitimately are. That's good.
Okay.
Most of you guys are.
So LinkedIn is an absolutely incredible marketing resource. In my opinion, it's one of the most incredible marketing resources we've ever had, and it's becoming more and more important and just a more incredible resource. So we all can use and engage in LinkedIn for free, and that's an example of a way that you can help communicate after you've developed your marketing plan.
Sarah does not prepare. Preparation is part of her brand. Don't you think? Yeah, okay. Okay, Tracy.
I have so many things going through my mind.
Tracy to that. Tracy, you're next up. What are some of the do's and don'ts when it comes to first impressions, and how can the first impressions establish your brand?
So I think, on a good note, you set me up nicely on some of the message I'm going to give. I do want to say two things. I'm not going to jump up and down. That's not happening. I had some good notes, though, on, I wish I would have thought of miscap management well before your friend did. But I am going to talk about how first impressions, in particular in the professional environment, work better when you have a plan and you're thoughtful on how you do it. And I look at first impressions as there's three things that most humans base their first impression on. There is what they see, there's what they hear, and there's all the nonverbal stuff going on while that's happening. So we know a lot about the optics space, and I think we know the logic of dress for the meeting, make sure you look the part. But I think where we don't think through the plan very well is in those second pieces. What's going to come out of my mouth during that first impression? What do I want them to hear? How often should I be speaking? And what are they watching me do during that first impression? So I look at tonight. We all came tonight to network, I assume. And we all walked in tonight, hopefully ready to engage. But what do we tend to do? Our phone rings, the text message goes off, and we give the impression of we're not really engaged or interested because we're looking at our device. And so when you walk into a room, having those intentional thoughts on, I want everybody in this room to know I'm here to meet them and I'm here to engage with them. When I sit in a business meeting, I would like to be the smartest person in the room. I rarely am. That is not in my mantra. But I do want to be a leader that's thought to be engaged. And so I want to come across in that room as informed and prepared. And I want to ask a couple critical questions in the room, but I don't want to take over the entire room the first time I'm meeting that room, because then I just come across as an overbearing individual. And so I think that thoughtful planning around what do I want people to walk away with the first time they engage with me, and we should be doing that every time we have those engagements, and then strategically monitoring those three pieces. What are they seeing? What am I doing? And what am I saying? And I won't jump up and down at that.
Tracy, I do want to have you introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was
That's
trying to
okay.
skip that because I couldn't come up with a really cool slogan after miscap management. I'm Tracy Sloan. I am the Vice President of Supply Chain for Marathon Oil. I have been there for 20 years and done like 25 jobs during that time. So I've been upstream, downstream, marketing, done a few HR projects, but I do love supply chain and I love working with my team. And I have a team member here today. Thanks for coming, Sam.
All right. Thank you for that. Mary, you're next up.
Hi.
How do you make your brand your own so it's unique to you?
Okay, I'm not sure how I'm going to follow these four brilliant ladies. I should have gone first.
Oh, sorry.
Totally
Next time.
kidding. So hi everybody, my name is Mary Atkinson. I'm the Director of Supply Chain at Oasis Petroleum. My brand, so I've been thinking about this a lot. I don't know that I knew what personal branding was. I think rarely people ever do. And I think it has a lot to do with your upbringing, your attitude, your personality, right? And it just kind of naturally forms. However, there are other parts of personal branding. So I feel like my personal branding has changed over the years. I think in the very beginning, when you're a new, upcoming, emerging professional, you're trying to be that person that everybody wants to go to. You want to be that trusted advisor. You want to be the expert in everything that you want to know about, right? So I think I was that person. But a lot of times what happens is you do that through a lot of networking. So luckily, I'm a social butterfly, I'm an extrovert. You can ask my husband, he's actually in the audience. We fit really well because he's more of an introvert, and so I go around the room and I'm the social butterfly and I introduce him to other people. So I'm very good at networking. I think it's just one of those things where it just naturally came out of my personality and my attitude. So I've been known as a trusted agent over the years for a lot of folks. And my passion is really in training and development. So as nerdy and geeky as we are about supply chain management, and I am very nerdy and geeky about supply chain management and how the value that you bring as a professional in supply chain management there's no words to describe it, but my passion is always about training and development, those competency levels, your career path. How do you figure out what you want to be when you grow up? Because that's very difficult, because sometimes I still ask myself, what do I want to be when I grow up?
Me too.
My question is, how do you make your brand your own so it is unique to you? So naturally, I have a very short answer to this question, because I think a lot of your personal branding, while I think it's very important to look around you, look at the brands that Sarah talked about, look at the people that you have been mentored by, your leadership, your ex-bosses, your current boss, your executives at your company that you work for. So you tend to look at everybody and you tend to mimic who you want to be. However, the biggest challenge between that, toggling between wanting to be who somebody that you're looking up to versus being genuine to yourself. And that's a fine line to kind of jump back and forth, because truly your personal brand really shines from your personality and who you are and how genuine you are. And that's the biggest advice that I would give everybody, is to be genuine, because you can't fake it. You can't fake it for a very long time. I'm pretty sure you can probably fake it for a couple years, maybe 3, 4, then you just get really tired, right? And then you become a liar. You don't want to be a liar. So I think it's really important to be genuine, to be your true self, and that personal brand of who you want to be, that's what comes out. And then you add that with a little flavor of people that you met, your mentors, people you look up to, and you start melting that together, and that becomes your personal brand.
Can I add one thing to that? Something that I think can really go a long way in portraying your brand is what you wear. So I'm wearing newspaper print. I just took my jacket off so you can all see. So my brand is around print and marketing procurement. So my team and I all have newspaper print outfits that we wear everywhere. We each have 5 outfits, and so when we travel and walk around and go to events, we wear our outfits, and people come up and engage in dialogue and want to know and have a conversation. So think about your brand and what you can wear that represents your brand. We did a GWPP event at CBS the end of last year, and one of our panelists was so cool, and every day she wears Converse that are glittery. And she changes up the color of the glitter, and that is becoming part of her brand and who she is, and it absolutely represents her personality. So just think about apparel and what you can wear to help represent your brand.
So we also have some friends who are, they do staff consulting or staff augmentation in the IT space, and they're brothers, and they wear the exact same suit every single time.
To the socks, shoes,
Everything.
ties.
I didn't ask about underwear, but they wear the exact same thing.
Yes.
Yes, it's part of the brand. Okay, Lynn, coming back to you.
Right.
Why is it important to monitor your brand? And if so, how do you do that?
It is important because how we perceive ourselves may not be the same way that everyone else perceives us. There's typically a gap in there. We may not always want to admit it, but there can be a gap. So you want to get feedback as often as you can, and there's a few ways to do that. When I have a team, I will typically have that discussion with them on a one-on-one, or maybe we'll go out to lunch, and I'll just ask them, what can I do differently or better to help you? And it usually gives you some insight into your management style or some behaviors that you may be doing as a leader that you think you're doing okay, but they're telling you that you're not. So you can get that information in a real gentle way. You can ask your staff in a staff meeting as well. Sometimes I'll start an open dialogue. You know, let's have some feedback. Tell us what we can do better as a team. So just try to create an open dialogue. And then lastly, as we all know about the 360s, right? So any sort of formal feedback from your company is always good. Always take a hard look at those and look inward and see if there are things that you can change. Maybe you thought you were doing well with, but you really are not or weren't.
So can I tell a story here? You guys can. So when I was early in my career, you know all those personality tests that you gotta take, the people styles and whatever, all the like acronyms that you get and the colors and wheels and all that stuff. So I took one of those, and my score on empathy was almost negative. Almost negative. And I was like, well, I thought I was a pretty nice person, but it's almost negative. Like I was as close to zero as you could get, okay? So I started asking my team members, because I had this image of myself as being someone who was caring and supportive and loved their careers and all this stuff. And they came back to me and they're like, no. No. You don't talk about my family, you don't remember what's going on in my life, nor do you even ask. Right? So that was the feedback. And I was like, ooh, I gotta change that. Now, could I have looked at that as like, I stink? That's never gonna happen. So I just don't have that in my genes. No, I looked at it as an opportunity. I looked at it as an opportunity. I'm like, I got this great piece of feedback that now I can work with and evolve. And I got advice from my mentors saying, every single meeting, start with a personal question, right? Start asking about their families, about them, what they want to do. And then the most important part, the next time you see them, you ask them how it's going, right? So that one little tip changed me. So now when I get those tests again, I'm like, ooh, let's see where I'm at on empathy. And I'm much, much better. I still have room to improve, but I'm much, much better. And it's now part of my brand. Like I focus on it, it's an effort, and I took that little piece of gold and made it into something even better. So it can be done, and just welcome that type of feedback and self-reflection. Thanks, Lynn. Sarah, speaking of evolving your brand, how do you evolve your brand when you're known as one thing and now you want to be something else? How do you do that and ensure that your own brand doesn't get stale?
And I think the question about evolving your brand is becoming even more and more important with all the changes in technology and just everything that's happening in the procurement and supply chain space. So very, very timely question. I think the first thing that you really need to focus on when you're wanting to evolve your brand or potentially transition your brand into something new is be really current on the trends that are happening in the market. What's happening in the world, what's happening locally, what's happening in tech, what's happening in hospitality. Really have a good business sense about things that are happening and where the market and where the world is going. It's just really important. The second is be an incredible sponge of information. There are so many ways that we can consume and get information now, whether it's talking to our peers, attending events, listening to podcasts. On LinkedIn, that's my #1 news source, I have to admit. But there's just so many ways to get information. Find what works for you and become a sponge for that information. Something that I think is really, really important is get out and attend conferences and events. How many of you have on your radar this year to attend at least one procurement conference?
So what they all do now. They all do? It's November, Dallas. Okay? All right.
Trick question.
Okay. All right, good.
It's really important to get out and meet people and listen to people speak and present. We can all kind of get stuck in our silos at the office behind our computers, looking at Excel spreadsheets, and it's really good to get out. and network, and a great way to do that is conferences and events. And something that I recommend that I've started challenging myself, and I'll share it with you, is I'm trying to go to 2 events a year that have nothing to do with procurement. And the reason for that is I want to learn about things that are very different outside our sphere and space and the things that I'm constantly studying and looking at. And since my world is the marketing procurement space, I want to go learn what's happening in the oil industry. I was just talking to Samantha from Tealbook, and she's going to an event tomorrow to learn about trends and innovations in oil. She said there might be no procurement people there, but she wants to know what's happening in the market. So think about something that you can go to that you think will help your network and help your education that are not procurement focused. And the final one is stay on top of technology. Technology is changing the world, and it's having a huge, huge impact on procurement. And the world of procurement and what we know today is not going to be the same in 5 or 10 years. And I'll do a quick story. I flew over here today from the San Francisco Bay Area, so I was on a 4-hour flight. And this very, very large gentleman sat down next to me. Longer legs than me. I'm 6 foot tall, and this guy was probably 6'5". And I'm one of those people who, I get on the internet, Southwest $8, amazing deal, and I work as much as I can on a flight. So I'm on my computer, I'm on LinkedIn, and I've got all my apps and things open on my computer, and the guy's kind of staring at me and giving me funny looks, and he said, "Ma'am, can I ask you a couple questions? What do you do for a living?" He goes, "I've never seen someone like you work on a computer." And he started asking me a lot of questions. He was in his 60s in the insurance industry, and he goes, "I just feel like I'm so behind the times. I don't know any of the stuff that you're talking about." He goes, "I never use LinkedIn. I just go on Facebook now and then." And to me, that's an example of someone where we don't want to be left behind. You want to know what's happening and what's out there, and make sure you can talk about it and incorporate it into your work.
Thank you. All very good. And by the way, keeping your pulse on future procurement trends, not only the technology that's going on around us, but the technology that's happening within procurement is going to change the skills that you need and what people are looking for. So it's not only relevant to keep your pulse on the technologies, but also how that changes what you need to develop in your own career. So great advice. Okay, where am I? I think, Tracy, you're up next. Okay, we already talked about this a little bit, but I would love your perspective. What do you do when your reputation is out of alignment with what you want your brand to be?
Yeah, I was thinking about this on the drive over. And what I would generically say, and for some of you in the room who know me, I'm a real tell you how it is kind of person. That is my reputation. So I'll give you my take with a full honest view. I think there's 2 things you got to do when your reputation is gapped, and one is a reality check. Because what I find is sometimes there are individuals trying to build a brand that's just not the brand for you to build. And once you have that gut check, reality check on, am I stretching myself to a level I just can't achieve right now, and I need to be thinking about a bit more realistically, that's first phase. Once you determine, look, the brand I'm trying to build is the brand I really think I can establish, it becomes about how do you fix what's broken. And that goes to knowing the voice of your customer and what they're actually after, the voice of the audience that you're trying to impress, and come up with the action plan. So when I took my team over in 2015, I had worked at the company for 20 years, but I hadn't done all of the 20 years' time in the team that I'm leading. And in fact, I left the company for a year, and by the time I came back a year later, the team had changed drastically. And so when I took the group over, I was very excited. It was the role I had been dreaming of for my entire career. It was 2015. My first assignment was, you need to go lay off 30% of your workforce. My second assignment was, go figure out how you're going to deliver even more value than you used to deliver. And so I went and sat down with all my business partners and said, give me your perspective. And what I learned really quickly is, we don't want to work with you, and we don't really like working with your team. Well, that's great. So the reputation I thought I was inheriting and trying to grow was a high-powered business partner supply chain. And what I realized is I had to go build credibility of I can even do the fundamentals within the group that I was leading. And we built an action plan really around what does, in this case, the team we were trying to brand with was every other business partner in the company, every operations leader, every other functional leader. We needed them to see us as a credible partner. That meant we had to deliver base results, and those results had to match what it was that they had expectations on. And then the second piece really ties to some of your comments. It was about bringing intelligence forward to show that audience that we not only knew our own game, we knew a broader game, and we could start talking about the competitive space of what other operators were doing, what other people outside of the industry were doing. So we started that journey in 15, and so now we're in 2020. We are the highest ranking support group in that company. We have a seat at every table, and now we don't even really know what to do with all the demand that's coming our way, and so now we're trying to rebrand ourselves a bit on how do you fine tune and prioritize all the work that's coming our way.
So I'm gonna throw a curveball. Yay! Guys, on your toes, you ready? Jessica, I'm gonna throw you out of order.
Oh,
Because this was such a good lead-in.
It was.
Okay, but you were up for the next question. I'm just gonna change your question. Okay. What are some of the benefits of developing and maintaining a brand for your procurement organization? So we're shifting from personal brand to procurement brand.
Yeah. It's critical. Procurement is a profession that we have to rely on our ability to influence, right, to get things done. Even in a company that has really strict mandates and policies, if the procurement organization is not well thought of and has a reputation as being, right, a barrier to getting business done, or not adding value, or not understanding what it is that they're buying, then people will find a way to work around you, and it inhibits your ability to add value and create value. So creating a brand that articulates the value that the procurement organization can bring to the table very concisely, as well as makes it clear that that brand is tied directly to the company's goals and objectives, is critically important, and not just at the leadership level, but at every single member level of the organization. Every interaction is creating an experience that's creating a perception, whether that's at the contract admin level, the buyer level, or the VP level. If you've got everybody marching with a consistent message, and that message being around value and how that value ties to the business, you're well ahead of the game. Almost every transformation project that we start with starts with interviewing your internal stakeholders and understanding how you're perceived. And there may be pockets of the business that thinks procurement is amazing, and other pockets of the business that does everything they possibly can to avoid it.
AKA marketing.
Where they say they're slow as sloths. I love that one.
Yes, there are, and everybody has a story and a battle wound, but understanding that at the micro level becomes important, because then you can build a plan around it, and a very, very targeted one that will move you so much faster than just trying to one-off kind of change perception.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So Mary, this is I'm gonna change your question a little bit, but I think it still applies. So what are the different facets? So we're talking about personal brand and procurement brand, but there's all kinds of different people you interact with. You interact with stakeholders, suppliers, your procurement colleagues. What are the different facets of your brand when you relate to all of those different groups of people? Or is it different, the same? And then how does it also relate to your procurement brand too?
I think there's a reason why Tracy and I get along very well, because I'm also known as being very honest and blunt and upfront. A lot of times, and again, I hate to bring up my husband, but he knows how I am, and so constantly I have to put a filter. You know, at home I don't need a filter, but he often reminds me, hey, at work you need to put that filter on. Can't say everything you're thinking. So I've been working on that as part of my branding. But being very upfront and honest has to do with integrity, right? It has a lot to do with your values. So I think that as you deal with your internal stakeholders, if you're dealing with your peers, if you're dealing with executives, if you're dealing with outside third-party suppliers and contractors that you work with, integrity is the key, right? So I think that a lot of times that's part of my personal brand, and hopefully that shines through with my conversations 360 all the way around to everybody I speak with. The second thing is more about the influence. I think being in supply chain, by the way, you need a psychology degree. I think we were talking about that somewhere. You need a psychology degree to read people's minds, right? But having that emotional intelligence to understand who you're speaking with and how you're going to influence them, because your audience is just as different as this panel up here as everybody out there, right? So you have to be able to influence, and I'm actually a very process-oriented person. I like to do step 1, step 2, step 3, and then when I get thrown off, I gotta, okay, let me recalibrate, right? So it's just one of those things where you just have to be able to influence and become that trusted advisor, then start really implementing and pushing your processes and your agendas on how things should be done. The other part of it is alignment. I'm very big on alignment. And it's a bad thing too, because you know what? It creates more meetings. Because especially even if you work in a very small organization, so my previous company was 140,000 employees. I now work for a company that's only 600 employees. So a huge shift. But it doesn't really matter if you work for a small company or a large company. You have to be able to be aligned. And oftentimes the only way to do that is to sit down and to really figure out, okay, is this what you meant? Because emails and texts, and those are terrible things, by the way, because you never know what the intention is and how people speak until you get face-to-face with them and get alignment and make sure that yes, we're all moving towards this goal. And so I think that across the board, whether, again, you're talking to your suppliers, you're talking to your colleagues, you're trying to influence your executives on this project that you want to push out, you have to make sure that you do with integrity. You have to make sure that you're aligned in exactly what you're working on. And those are the brands that hopefully I portray over the years. And sometimes it's a learned skill to be able to do that. And in a procurement organization, a supply chain organization, you have to establish that core value in order to be able to do those things.
Thank you for that. Oh, you guys taking notes? I wish I could. I'm like, I didn't bring anything to take notes on. I know all of you now, though, so I'll get back. So I think if I'm gonna keep your other question till a little bit later on. Okay. So Lynn, how do you build a? Oh. I don't know what happened there. Okay. How do you build a brand for a procurement organization?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm coming at this from a perspective of building one, just standing a new one completely up. So going into a company that hasn't had a procurement organization. So first thing that I focused on was putting a vision together, a mission. Who did we want to be? What services did we want to provide to our internal stakeholders? What type of organization do we want to be? Do we want to be more strategic, tactical? Do we truly want to partner with our stakeholders? So I needed a vision. What I did after that was I took that vision on a roadshow. So of course I had buy-in from the senior leaders, the CEO, CFO, etc. But I took it to the next level. I went to all the key stakeholders in the business unit to say, hey, this is what my plan is, and here's how I'm going to help you, and here's how I'm going to add value to the organization. So I socialized it first, right? At that time, I had the ability to build the organization, so I wanted to structure it the right way. And I mean by that is hire the right talent and build it so that it supports your internal customers effectively. So for example, I had a very large IT spend, but very small marketing spend. So I'm going to have more resources on the IT side and less on the marketing side. So design it effectively so you can set yourself up for success. And then of course, the next thing is deliver. Do what you say you're going to do, right? Add value at every turn, whether it's in a negotiation, helping your internal stakeholder define business requirements, answering questions, giving examples of additional suppliers, whatever you can do to add value. Be customer serving, customer focused. And lastly, and it's self-promoting. And I'm not very good at that, but what I mean by self-promote the organization. So as a leader, procurement leader, you all track metrics, right? On how you perform, how your teams perform, the value that you add. So proactively promote those, but do it humbly, right? Always get in front of your boss. Always get in front of your stakeholders. Set up meetings to do that because I find we don't do that enough. So our value can be questioned periodically by various people throughout the organization.
Yeah.
So you just want to constantly have that feedback loop. Here's what I say I'm going to do, and measure it, and then readjust accordingly based on what you really want your brand to be.
I'm going to add one more comment on that because I think this is something that I learned going from procurement. So I spent 16 years in procurement and then went to the dark side and became a supplier.
Yay for entrepreneurship.
Yay! Now I have two companies that starting up in a year and a half. So it's been a bit of a crazy adventure. But what I would say is what I learned is there's power in telling stories. Right? Sometimes we get these beautiful scorecards, we have Tableau out there, and we're clicking away and drilling in and doing all that wonderful stuff, but we forget to tell the story. Stories of all the great work that you're doing, your teams are doing, the impact that you've had with your customers, your internal customers, those have so much power. There's a couple of people in the particularly in the sustainability space that are doing wonderful things telling stories. If you haven't already, look up the CPO of Unilever. He's out there on LinkedIn almost every day sharing a story. And it goes so much for their brand and value that they're creating as an organization. So don't forget that. Be okay with telling a very powerful story, and it goes so much further than just sharing numbers on a chart. Okay. All right, there we go. Jessica, we're going to go back to you. Okay. So we're personal or professional branding. Which one is better or more important than the other? Or are they about the same?
Yeah, I thought about this. I think there was a time, a long time ago, when I started working, where you had your work world and you had your personal world, and they tended to not be terribly integrated. I think that's changed. Your relationships may start out personal and migrate to professional. They may start out professional and migrate to the other way. And some faster than others, but your brand is still your brand, right? If it's authentically who you are, your brand doesn't change if you're in work versus if you're with your personal group. So to me, they're the same. You just sort of have different layers, and you see different, more professional, more personal, depending on who the audience is and what your relationship is. So yeah, I think they're the same.
Yeah.
Or they should be.
It should be. I guess I've been telling a lot of stories tonight, but it just brought up another thing that I was told early in my career. I had a woman mentor, fabulous woman, but I just had, actually Abby, she's here in the crowd, my daughter, I just had her a long time ago, 9 years ago. So I was talking a lot about my family at work. I was talking about the stuff that was going on at home. And my woman mentor sat me down one day and she said, stop talking about your family. Nobody wants to hear it.
Wow.
Nobody, it's a lot of men in the office. We keep personal, and business. And my jaw dropped. And I looked at her and I said, I can't do that. Can't do it. That's, you get feedback a lot. Not all of it's valuable feedback. And you have a choice to accept that feedback or not. And this was one that I was like, no, because that's not my true self. My true self, I am a working mother. And I have a beautiful daughter at home, and I have a family, and I'm going to come to work and share that with other people. So I absolutely agree. The more authentic you are about being true to yourself, that is your brand, whether it's personal or professional. Okay. Anywho, I got all teary-eyed. Thanks, Abby. Okay. So Sarah, coming back to you, isn't branding really about self-confidence and success? Just like, oh, this is going out. We're gonna have to share microphones. Is it about self-confidence and success, and the more of each, the better your brand, or is it something else?
So I think sometimes people get confused with self-confidence and being cocky. And there's a big difference. We can all probably think about an interaction that we've had in the last year about someone who we would consider to be cocky. A little too into themselves, it was all about them, not about what's in it for the other person or helping and contributing. And then there are those that I would consider to be really self-confident. And to me, self-confidence can be a really good thing. Deshaun Williams is in the audience. And
He's not confident at all.
Very sad, very sad.
But the reason I'm calling him out is he's someone who I would describe as being very self-confident in a really good way. When he comes into a room, he has presence. He's someone that you want to engage with and someone that you want to talk to, and he's not all about himself. He has conversations and he wants to know about you and how he can help. So I think a really important part of branding is getting yourself to a place of self-confidence, but not being cocky. And I think a lot of us in the room and in the procurement